Hello and welcome back from the networking break. This is Tom Bechtold with SecureWorld Digital. In the spirit of the first ever Detroit, Cincinnati, Toronto virtual conference, I had to put on my old Magnum PI hat. So, right. Okay. Anyway, so how is everybody doing on the Cyber Hunt leaderboard? You guys are out there doing this stuff, right? There's Dash for prizes. You got to go out and talk to the sponsors. They have a lot of cool prize giveaways, and they're the reason this conference is affordable. So go out and visit these guys, and they know a lot of stuff. So there you go. All right, that's all I've got to say about that. But, and I know I say this a lot, but this time it is actually truthful. We have a packed panel. We've got 5 gentlemen here that are dying to answer questions. So I've laid out some strict ground rules with our panelists, and they've agreed to my terms. I also have control of a mute button, so there's that. Anyway, please send these gentlemen as many questions as you can. I mean, try to keep it topical, right? But throughout our conversation, they're going to be typing out answers. We also have some slides that we have some questions that we borrowed from some of the other SecureWorld webcasts on cloud security. So without further ado, let's meet our panel. So I'm just going to go around the horn. Each of these gentlemen is going to go ahead and introduce themselves. They've got a little bit of a budget of time here, but Mike Lloyd, go ahead. You've got 30 seconds. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Mike Lloyd. I'm the CTO at Red Seal. By background, once upon a time, I was an epidemiologist. And one funny thing about this pandemic is I no longer have to explain to people what that means. I used to struggle with that a lot more, but really what I've been doing for a lot of decades is reasoning about networks because humans aren't very good at it. And I used to do it 40 years ago on disease networks, and then I started doing network management, then went from there into network control in the O's, and then in the 10s realized, oh, actually security is a good place that needs this too. So nowadays I reason about network controls and how you block access you don't want, both in on-prem and in the cloud, because that's the new frontier of network diseases.
Excellent. Welcome, Mike. Ryan, let's hear from you.
Hey, everybody. I'm Ryan Archer. I'm a senior sales engineer at Arctic Wolf. I've been, like Michael, I've been doing IT security since the 1900s. I was on the customer side as well as for several cybersecurity companies, Fortinet, Sophos, and now Arctic Wolf. And it's been a great ride, and I've been really lucky to be in the security world, and it's been just a really cool place and interesting thing to do.
Well, welcome, sir. Chase. Over to you.
Hey, guys. Chase Massar here. I'm a sales engineer for AlertLogic, so that's in the MDR space. So I have a background in a lot of networking and then eventually made myself into security. So very nice to be on with you guys.
Very good, sir. Thank you and welcome. Over to Grant Asplund.
Tom, thanks. Hi, everyone. Grant Asplund. I'm with Checkpoint Software. I'm an evangelist now. I guess the claim to fame is that I was their first evangelist back in the spring of '98 when I was part of the first acquisition Checkpoint made. Trivia question for anybody who knows who it is. There's no fingerprint showing. I returned a couple of years later after I actually bought that company back and sold it to Newstar, and have been doing a bunch of other things in the security space. And was working for my good friend Zohar Alan at Dome9, and 3 months later got acquired by Checkpoint, and I've been back for a couple of years. So it's nice to be here. Thanks.
Just when you think you're getting out, they bring you right back.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
It's true.
And over to William.
Hey, thanks. Welcome, everybody. So I've been in IT for 46 years. I started writing COBOL code for an insurance company, went to IBM, worked on the mainframe operating system there for about 11 years, went to Gartner. I was there for 12 years, founded the information security service there. And when we turned into the new decade, spent some time as an auditor with a major accounting firm, and then CTO of a startup in identity management called Waveset. But for most of the last 15 years, I've been working as an independent. I joined Trend about 3 years ago. So more than half of my career has been involved in various aspects of information security. However, cloud is as new to me as it is to you and everybody else.
So, Bill, I got to ask, do they call you for bug fixes on the COBOL code from time to time?
Well, it would be humble bragging to say I never actually had to go in at midnight and fix anything. However, that was not true of my IBM career. There was one piece of code, page fault front end, 199 lines of assembler, and it was 99.5% perfect. Unfortunately. But that's a story for a couple of beers later.
That sounds fair. You guys will have to go to the networking lounge and exchange tales over a virtual beer.
Well, maybe virtual, but I'm back. I got it right out there.
There you go. Excellent. Well, welcome, gentlemen. Welcome. Let's start off with our first question. So this one, I want to hear everybody, but this one, just for a level set, what's a common one common pitfall from each of you? I'm sorry, whoever's last, that's just how it goes. What's a common pitfall you see companies make when moving to the cloud? And on this one, I'm going to go with Grant.
Putting a human being in charge of it.
Ooh,
arguably the number one pitfall, certainly in cloud, is posture management, configuration, right? Making foolish errors. And so that's why I say the human being.
Okay. I like that answer. Let's go with Chase. You're next.
Yeah, one major pitfall I generally see is not finding the right approach to securing your overall cloud environment. There's always going to be new exposures. There's always going to be new vulnerabilities. So adopting like a security and layers or defense approach is probably one of the best approaches you could do. So not finding the right approach, the right model, whatever it may be, is one of the pitfalls we typically see. It's just not knowing what you don't know.
Did we lose Tom? If we did, I'll go next.
Ryan, you're next. Sorry, guys.
All good. So I'm going to piggyback off Grant because I love to make fun of users, but also because of the humans. But to me, the next biggest one is visibility. Just understanding what you have, what's out there, because there's such a lack of control and unintentional insider threats that it's just visibility and knowing what you have out there is to me one of the biggest pitfalls.
Okay. Good answer. And over to Mike Lloyd.
Yeah, I get cornered towards the end, right, as the things get eliminated. But I think I can still differentiate what I was going to say about inventory. Inventory and visibility, not quite the same thing. But I would claim if you're doing anything in security and you're not doing inventory first, you're doing it wrong, right? You have to have a complete picture of what's going on. And the trick is that's always true in every kind of security. But in cloud, inventory is a different game. Right? For the accounts that you know about, it's easy enough to get in there and find everything that's inside one particular cloud virtual network. But now that every VP with a credit card and an attitude can go and buy new fabric, the trick is finding all of the fabrics. It's easy to see one fabric when you've caught it, but finding all the fabrics is hard.
I like that analogy. Very good. And William.
Well, I want to stand up for the humans involved in this. It's tempting to blame the person when there is a defect in the technology, and I would say that the user interface can be a formidable defect. Every cloud instance is perfectly secure when it is created, but somehow between the moment of its creation and its appearing on the internet, there are so many options to check out. There's so many checklists to be validated. There are so many organizations that cloud image goes through that by the time it gets out there, how many times have we heard that, a configuration error led to stuff being exposed? Well, I'm not going to say that though. That's not my pitfall. My pitfall is the absence of governance. And I'll explain it this way. I went to my doctor, good guy, and he said, Bill, you got to lose weight. And I said, well, great. How do I do that? And he gave me some hints, and I'm going to share them with you. This is important. He said, first, eat less. And second, exercise more. Being an architect, I immediately took a look at my core competences, and I realized that eating less is something I can do, but exercising more really isn't a core competence, and so I outsourced that. I send the health club a check for $70 every month. I haven't lost a damn pound. Those guys aren't doing their job.
So true. So true. You gotta cancel that membership, man.
I've got to stay compliant.
I think the other thing, the other thing to remember too, when you're talking about inventory or visibility, and this really speaks to why there's no company I have ever met is at a single point in their journey. Right? There's some lift and shift, and there's some functions, and there's some containers, and, it's all over the map. And I think that too, because I think you're exactly right. Drift, right? Sprawl, huge problem. I always say we thought it was a problem with, remember virtualization when it came about. Thank you, Stanford. But all of a sudden we went, oh, vMotion. Whoa, what's inter-VM communication? Now it's like deja vu all over again, only exacerbated because now I'm anywhere and I can spin it up. And it can be any one of those different types of pieces. So I think it's, and I'll throw another one out. Where's the view of an application today? We talk a lot about the infrastructure, but, when we're accustomed to having a very monolithic view of our app, and, those days are gone.
I'm going to pause you there, Grant, because I know we have an app question specifically later on, but no spoilers. Okay, good. That's a great add-on, though. Thank you. Let's go to our second question, gentlemen. Let's see. What security challenges do you see with using different cloud providers at the same time? Let's start with Mr. Lloyd on this one.
Sure. And I can build on what Bill and Grant were both just talking about, right? If I look at customers, they're all moving into a hybrid world, right? They've got their own legacy fabric and then cloud fabrics, plural. And that plural is really a problem for the security team, right? The individual teams. This is what Grant was just bringing up, right? One individual team who are just working on their Kubernetes application or their bit of GCP or Lambda or whatever they like to do. That DevOps team just has one language to speak. They just have to learn one cloud vendor. The problem for the security team is you have to be a linguist now because all of these cloud vendors talk in different ways, right? They all deliver roughly comparable virtual networks, but they call them different things, right? One will call it a VNet, one will call it a VPC. You've got your security groups, you've got your endpoint policy contracts, right? Different vendors keep reinventing all these new terms for the core ideas of I've got a thing and I want to control access to the thing. But that means the security team has to know all of those languages at once. Oh, and by the way, the legacy fabric hasn't been turned off yet. So you have to do all of that together. So it's a real problem that is unique to the security discipline. No other DevOps teams have to know all of the language. They're allowed to specialize. The problem in security now is we have to be good at all of these. And that's very, very difficult, right? Grant, you talked about the way that the monolithic application view has been lost. Yeah, and even the monolithic infrastructure gets lost because you can talk to Amazon and they'll give you a great picture of your Amazon fabric, and you can talk to Google and they'll give you a pretty good picture of your Google fabric, but you need a picture of your fabric. And that's really hard. You have to be a network linguist.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Great answer. Anybody else want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, and I mean, not only having to do all of that and have the different languages you have to speak, but every CSP, every cloud provider is going to have different responsibilities for not only you, but what they do, what they protect. And, having to learn what each cloud provider can secure and what you have to do can be challenging at times. You almost have to be an expert in that one cloud provider. So, having those people on board that are experts that understand the shared responsibility model for each provider can be a challenge a lot of times.
Yeah, and I'll add on that. as we have shifted into this world where we're working with cloud providers, multiple cloud providers, it's extremely lumpy because Active Directory is a sacred cow known only to Microsoft. So in identity and access management, Google could give a, right? But it's pretty important to Microsoft. So the way they approach those things, now they're all summiting the same mountain, but they're taking different paths. Furthermore, I might have, let's just throw a number out, 26, 30 policy controls that I have on-prem, and I have no equal parity in any one cloud provider. I might have 21 from one and 16 from another, and so to try to unify my policy across all of those, to harmonize it, really tough. Because I don't know, you guys may know, are they having regular meetings? Hey, we're going to release these APIs this week. It doesn't happen that way. So it makes it very lumpy, makes it very difficult to harmonize.
All right, good answers, gentlemen. Thank you. Let's go to our next one. What makes securing my cloud infrastructure different and more challenging than securing on-prem assets? Let's go, Ryan. You've been kind of quiet. Let's pick on him. Are you awake, Ryan?
I am. I'm here. So on that one, on cloud versus on-prem, I think it's funny that everything we've talked about thus far is, and I don't know if you did this on purpose, but the progression has been very good, because just like when we went to VMware and virtualization it's a new world, and everybody wants to be, we're literally 5 minutes out of the womb and we're trying to be Usain Bolt. There's not a crawl, walk, run. It's sprint as soon as it's there. And I think that just lends itself to, especially with cloud and the way it is and the way we develop on it, is that it allows, unintentional shadow IT. Things are sometimes outside of the control of a typical security workflow, and things can be exposed when they don't want to be exposed. Ports. It's funny that the same problems kind of repeat themselves in a new technology, but literally I feel like that is the biggest piece. It's a new technology that not everybody knows everything about, and what is the best way to secure it. And it's getting that control while still also, by the way, we have to enable a business. Typically, this is us in our IT world, and we love to get really excited about all this stuff, and even as developers and all that. But at the end of the day, these people are supporting businesses, and they're working on applications and trying to further their businesses, and people just get in a hurry. As it relates to on-prem, that's pretty easy. We have well-established processes to secure those environments, and it's kind of turned into a little bit of the wild, wild west, at least what I've seen with customers that I've worked with. And of course, being in security and working for security manufacturers, a lot of times it's like watching Jerry Springer. You only see the really bad stuff. There's a lot of great things that happen, but we come in sometimes to fix and help fix the really nasty stuff that's happened because of lack of control and just knowledge of those cloud environments.
Anybody remember RTFM?
Yes.
Somebody's got to remember that. I'm showing my age. I know. Yes, thank you. Right, the SMA guy. Go ahead and share what it means. Fine, I'll give away the.
No, I said.
Well, now you have to give the answer. I mean, come on.
Read the manual.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. Right.
And if it's the fifth time you've asked me how to print or make that character bold, that's when the F gets inserted, and it's not fine. But my point in saying that, I mentioned this a lot. Ever since we've gotten this new UI where we have this phenomenon called undo, we don't read the manual, we download it, fire it up, poke, hunt, click, undo. And what I always remind people is, there's some 200 functions in AWS alone that don't have an undo. So, it's false hope. It's false belief that you're going to be okay poking around doing something that might be catastrophic.
That's a valid point. Mike, did you I think you had something too.
I'll try and keep it short because we've still got a fair bit to get through. But yeah, I mean, in a way, this is what I specialize in doing, right? I specialize in helping organizations deal with their cloud fabric and their legacy on-prem stuff. So they're hybrid networks. So I spend a lot of time worrying about how are they different, how are they the same. I have a maybe slightly controversial opinion that IP is still the lingua franca, right? Everything's still a packet when you're going to communicate at distance, right? It's really still the network that causes all these benefits. So you can still map using IP. And what you need to do is map these fancy new technologies, say Lambda or what have you, into how they show up in your IP backbone. And some people object to that, saying, but it's new and complicated and interesting. It has new properties. And my point for that is, if you think about military strategy and how you fight a war, you always need a terrain map, and then you arrange your forces on there. And somebody who's a specialist in tanks might say, oh, but that map, that's not exciting because I've got complicated things that I know about tanks. And somebody else makes howitzers and they know complicated things about howitzers. Yeah. But you got to put it all on the same map. Otherwise, you can't see your war situation. And that's what we're trying to do. So for that, I recommend there are huge differences between cloud and on-prem. We could go on about it for a while. But the way you normalize across it is put it all on an IP map, because that helps you understand how the tanks interact with the troops and who's on the left side and the right side of the river, that sort of thing.
Okay. One final comment from William, please.
Yeah, just very briefly, I'd say the biggest challenge moving to cloud is for those of us that have experience in conventional data centers. You can go in and reset stuff. You can go in and plug stuff. You can instrument stuff. You can load monitoring, sensing, and logging technology onto your platform. Amazon is not going to let me install a logger on the platform that's running my code. So being able to move this stuff through remote control sometimes puts people back a bit. And for those that have been in data centers, at least they have the old map, to use your phrase. But for many of those who've never experienced the physical world, then the concept is a little vague. They only get to see what the particular vendor describes the map ought to look like.
Kids these days who've never experienced the physical world.
Kids these days, I tell you. Moving on to our next question. Thank you, gentlemen. Great answers. Let's see here. And just a reminder to our audience out there, keep those questions coming in. I don't see these guys typing too much, so let's get them busy. Seriously, though, go ahead. Get these questions in there. They're here. They want to answer these questions for you, so please type them out to them. Next question. What are the challenges of securing your various applications in the cloud? And I'm going to go with Mr. Chase on this one.
Yeah, so as organizations start to shift their applications from on-prem to the cloud, a lot of times those security policies and the tools they're using to protect those applications on-prem don't always translate. They're sometimes lagging behind. So that leaves you vulnerable, especially when that initial crucial migrating portion of that. I believe it's 60 to 80% attacks are web attacks. So making sure you're secure from development all the way to you deploy fully in the cloud is extremely important. Past that point, how do customers protect themselves in the cloud from there? You need multiple layers to be able to see an application, especially depending on the type of application. If it's monolithic, if it's microservices, how do you get visibility into those core components that make up those applications? You need definitely to see, check the vulnerabilities, make sure your code is secure, constantly scan that when the CI/CD is constantly being pumped out, making sure you have preventative measures in there. Do you have a WAF in place blocking traffic, making sure, we're sending to the backend proper traffic and nothing's going to affect anything in the backend. If something were to get back there, do you have the necessary logging components? Can you even install a log agent like we were talking about earlier to be able to give visibility into that? How do you get around that? Are you monitoring the network traffic on the back end? So there's multiple solutions, multiple ways to be able to get visibility, and it's crucial to be able to do that at the beginning, all the way to you're running the actual application in the cloud. So there's a lot that goes into it, and it's very crucial that you have a lot of the tools, solutions, and expertise in place to be able to make that entire picture come together.
Very good answer. Anybody have anything different to tack onto that? Okay. You are very thorough, Chase. Nicely done. Let's go to our next question. Okay. Does the insider threat model change due to cloud? I'm assuming that must be malicious since this guy is so happy and smug. Let's go with Mr. Malik on this one.
Well, yeah, I think it does. And the reason is not the perspective you might think at first. There are so many ways to get a hold of cloud services and SaaS services that an individual who is your trusted insider may also be the trusted insider for someone else in a different context, but they're using their infrastructure to access both, which means they're acting as a conduit or a bridge for an attack. This is a particular cloud-specific subset of the general problem with people working from home and using a shared infrastructure to connect to their bank. Their kids are going to school, and all sorts of stuff is riding on that platform, which inside the historically conventional enterprise would never happen. So the problem there is that you've got insiders of different varieties who are touching or one hop away from each of your cloud environments.
Okay. Ryan, did you want to add on?
Yeah, and if you look at just a quick example, and sometimes, and to back up Bill, it's not always intentional. It's the unintentional insider threat as well. If you go back to Capital One, that was someone that just didn't have good security knowledge, and their big breach was because a cloud service was misconfigured. So the insider threat sometimes is just somebody that doesn't know as much as they think they do, and then obviously you're in the news at that point.
Okay. Anybody else on this one?
Yeah, I think I can make a quick comment here. Just, of course, people haven't changed, right? So people's motivations are pretty much the same as they always were. And so that's why you could make a case for, no, the insider threat model doesn't change if you're thinking about the tactics and motivations of the people. But I think Bill still has a great point. What is different is the context. So what's changing is the nature of IT fabric. But if you look at the long view, it's that it's changing back. It's a pendulum that swings from centralized to decentralized. And we've had a couple of cycles there. Once upon a time we had mainframes and everything was very centralized. And then people started to hate those guys in the IT or security team who made it so difficult to do anything on that mainframe. We had the PC revolution to get everything out of there and let it spread out. Okay, well then we had to chase those guys and we built security stacks to go drop onto all those machines with agents. And now we're swinging back again. And in a sense, cloud gives us a bit more centralized control. But that pendulum will keep swinging back and forth. And that's why you have to keep thinking of a new threat model for the insider. It's not that insiders are so different. It's the context we put them in, which I think, Bill, is consistent with your point.
The context certainly makes a difference. There's definitely true. All right. Let's move on. Good job, gentlemen. Zero trust. Okay, let's see. What does zero trust actually mean for cloud-based computing? Bill, let's stick with you on this one.
Okay, well, I'm going to start out by breaking the question into two parts. And the first part is, what does zero trust actually mean? And my comment on that was, I think it's horribly named. Because there always has to be something you trust, right? Darmok, Shaka, when the walls fell. I mean, there has to be a common reference point. There has to be a mutual base of understanding and trust. So the purpose of zero trust, which is an outgrowth of the Jericho project, is to not rely on a perimeter. And that makes perfectly good sense. So with cloud-based computing, the answer is you want to assume that people should not have access to something unless they explicitly request it and are explicitly granted with it. Now, this isn't specific to cloud. This is just a general principle of information security. The problem with cloud is it's so easy to grant access and let other people come in that you really can end up walking as though there were walls when there are none. And that's why zero trust is a helpful reminder, even if it's irritating.
Even if it's irritating, I like that. Mike Lloyd, I think you had something to add on.
Yeah. I mean, I'm completely with Bill here, but I'll try and add a different point. But yeah. I mean, anybody who's sat in a chair does not believe in zero trust. There's no such thing as zero trust. We all trust things all the time, right? But so when I think about what does it really mean, I think Bill explained it very well. It's the loss of the perimeter. But when people used to talk about deperimeterization, they meant the perimeter goes away. No. It's much more like, think of Mickey Mouse in Sorcerer's Apprentice, right? Where he has a broom and then he wants to stop the broom. So he takes an axe and he chops the broom. And now he's got hundreds and hundreds of little brooms. We call that microsegmentation, right? So yes, we have moved away from a single big perimeter, but all we've done is made Mickey the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Now he's awash in brooms.
Perimeter is dead. Long live the perimeter.
Well, yeah, long the perimeters. That's the trick. There's so many of them now.
Yeah,
Multiple.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I like that analogy. Very good. Let's go to our next question here. How does the DevOps concept of pets versus cattle, I hope somebody can explain this because I didn't know what it was, change the security landscape? And I like your analogies today, so I'm going to start with Mike Lloyd.
Sure.
Sorry, everybody else, but you're Mike. You get it.
Yep. Well, I want to be clear. I did not invent this one. I found it when listening to DevOps guys. So it's a really, really important thing for security people to get familiar with. So if folks are already familiar, sorry, I do have to go through the basics, because what I found is a lot of security professionals haven't heard about this, even though when you trace it back, you can go look this up. The idea has been kicking around in the DevOps community for about 10 years now. So it's really matured as an idea in the DevOps world. And it really helps. It helps to understand what they're saying, because I found a lot of security teams are struggling to even keep up with what the DevOps teams now do. And when they go running around with their Lambda or their Kubernetes or whatever it is they play with, you realize they don't just speak differently. We talked about needing a linguist earlier, but they also think differently. And so pets and cattle is one of the big aha moments you can get about how they think. Right? The idea is, once upon a time, all computers were pets. Well, what's a pet? It's an animal that we adopt and we give it lots of care and feeding. We look after it. If it gets sick, we take it to the vet and pay a lot of money to hope that it gets better. Cattle's kind of not like that. Yeah, they're still animals, but we have a herd of them. We don't give them names. And, if they get sick, we kill them and replace them. And this is the shift in thinking that you can get to in cloud. It comes with a lot of it's built on the same virtualization technology that Grant referred to as well, right? It's this ongoing layering of, first we had virtualization, then we got cloud, then we had on-prem, and now we have container management and orchestration with the Kubernetes and Docker and so on. And what all these are doing is make it easier and easier and easier to kill cattle and replace them. But does that mean we now go to a world that's entirely cattle? Well, no, it doesn't. This is why it's so useful to read what the DevOps guys say about this sort of stuff. It's pets and cattle. So what a DevOps person needs to think about is, okay, which of my machines are precious pets that I need to give names to and give care and feeding to, and which ones can I treat like cattle, where I can put them under the control of one of these orchestrators, which will fire them up and shut them down. Now, if they're thinking about that, well, why do you as a security professional need to know that? Well, think about, say, vulnerability management. What do? Apply patches? Not to cattle, you don't. You don't patch cattle. You replace them, right? So even something as basic in our discipline as vulnerability management is transformed in how you do it once you understand that pets and cattle are different, and that if your IT environment is rife with some pets and some cattle and you don't know which is which, you need to find out, because you manage them differently. So really important principle. I say it doesn't originate with me. You can look it up, and all the DevOps communities talk about pets and cattle and how they run their fabric.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else want to chime in?
Well done.
All right. Another thorough answer. Thank you, Mike. Let's go to our next one. This is actually a final takeaway. I actually did want to come back on something Ryan had kind of basically just touched on briefly, but he had brought up the concept of shadow IT, and we didn't really talk about that too much today, but I kind of want to jump back to it a little bit. How can you get your arms around this when it's so cheap and it's so easy for some employees to just throw it on a credit card and bam, now my company's in the cloud, right? I mean, Ryan, I know we didn't really talk about this one ahead of time, but you brought it up. So do you want to touch base on it? Otherwise, I'll let anybody.
No, sure. And this is one of those where there's, several ways. I'm sure all of us could answer this and have different answers. But first of all, I think that's where it's important to have good traffic visibility, good network visibility, what's coming in and out of your network, number one. And then number two, it is that bit back to that visibility, control, and just good governance. It's one of those things where I go back to when I first started, have policy. You can't enforce anything if you don't have a policy. But definitely, visibility on the network side, and then inventory control. And not only just inventory, as I think Michael said earlier, it's going to change day 2. It's continuous and continuous discovery inventory as we go along. And I'm not going to ramble on. Everybody will probably have an answer here.
Right. Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, definitely agree with Ryan a bit. So I include his answer by reference. That was great. Yeah, and you talked about how you can do it by detecting network traffic. Yeah, I mean, just to clarify how serious this problem is, right? Any of us right now, if you take a second, if you took a credit card out of your pocket and you paused this meeting, you could go off and buy yourself a little bit of Amazon VPC if you wanted to, and you could set up a database in there, and you could type in your name and your employee number. Nothing can stop you. The central security team cannot possibly see you doing that, right? If you use a company asset, okay, you've got some agents and some CASBs that will be able to interfere. But in general, you cannot stop somebody putting a company record out in Cloud Fabric without telling you, right? It's impossible to stop them. But notice that was a toy. That was just me going up and building a database and putting my company fact up there that I happen to know. Once something becomes serious, it will leave footprints. And that was, Ryan was on part of that answer, saying, once it's a real business service that's transacting data, it will transact data with other parts of your network. That's how networks are. So you can pick it up. Ryan's point was from communication. My angle, just to make sure I'm making a different point, is you can also pick it up from that IP fabric that I talked about. Right? What I do is I help companies map their hybrid network, cloud and on-prem, pull it all together. And what do we find? We find a lot of half bridges. Right? I've got this Amazon VPC over here, and it seems to have an external peering with another VPC, and we didn't find that in your complete inventory of all the accounts that you knew about. Well, what that means is shadow IT, but it's shadow IT that grew up to a point that it became serious. And how could you tell it became serious? Because it needed to start connecting to the rest of your stuff. And you could pick that up either or both of Ryan's way, look for packets, or my way, look for fabric. But one way or another, when it's not just me as a toy setting the database and starting just typing company facts into there, if it's real company data that's moving in a production service that you really need to care about, it will leave footprints of one kind or another.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen. Let's go to our final takeaways now. On this one, our question's up there, but I'm going to give each of you 60 seconds. I think we've got enough time. So we have a lean IT staff. I'm assuming that means there's very few of them, and it's not that they're just really fit and don't eat. What is the most important thing I could do to ensure the best possible security posture in my cloud infrastructure? Okay, so that's the question. Let's start with, we haven't heard from Grant for a little while. Grant, why don't you kick us off here?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. And earlier there was a question about, this cloud and the security and whether or not it's more secure, less secure. That's an ongoing discussion. It's I encourage everyone, take a look at the Cloud Security Report by Cybersecurity Insiders. There's some 400,000 constituents that are comprised in it, and it's got some really interesting data. To your point on not being able to use on-prem, 82% say can't use the stuff I got on-prem to work in the cloud. Doesn't happen. 90% are worried either very or extremely about continuous compliance of workloads if they move them into the cloud. So all the points we're hitting on are spot on. But I want to point, I suspect, like many of my esteemed colleagues here, pay the Gartner tax. We pay the Gartner tax. And as a result, we get these wonderful documents, right, and predictions. But I want to just point to one published October last year by, many of us know, Neil McDonald and associate Tom Kroll. And the headline reads, "How to Make Cloud More Secure Than Your Own Data Center." So, the pundits are saying we can make it more secure. But if you go on and you read, what it tells you quickly is, we're taking a page from, frankly, we're taking a page from Germany, from the automakers, right? How many of you, anybody bought a new car lately? Last 6 months? I have. Did it come with a training on how to be a better driver? Did it come with a free defensive driving class? Heck no. But it'll keep in the lane for you. It'll park for you. It'll stop for you. So that's how I think we're evolving. But to the point, this particular pundit, first thing on their magic pyramid that they tell you to buy, continuous cloud security posture management. So, it is a critical building block, I would argue, early. There are many out there, check them all out. I would argue you need to look at a platform, something that accommodates that continuous journey. But you need help. You need tools. There's not a single person on this call that has a client that, if they've got any on-premise infrastructure at all, that knows about all of the new stuff and how it works, as well as all of the old stuff. I mean, it's too much. But yet they're trying it. Oh, hey, do you see Amazon just got this? Yeah, well, let's try it. Right? This is what happens. So get tools, get help, align with partners, smart folks like those, in this panel and their organizations or partners or us or whomever, but get help. Don't be afraid to ask for help, because if you go out and try to do it alone, you're going to step in thin ice and it's cold and you're going to die fast. Hypothermia will set in. So get help.
Thank you, Grant. Excellent. Over to Ryan. Ryan, sir.
So Grant actually did you stole a little bit of thunder, and I love it. And for me, the biggest thing is that it's awesome. But, they didn't lack the expertise to really secure it, but yet they try it. And yeah, there are tools out there, and no offense to any of my colleagues on the call, but if you think about today in the security market, there's over 3,000 vendors in the security market today. And I've been at companies that have done this. I've been in calls where, this new product comes along, just security as a whole forever. It's this new magic bullet that's going to be, it's the new thing that you're not going to need endpoint anymore because our next generation firewall is so good. This endpoint's so good, you're not going to need anything else. But yet last year we set a record for breaches still, right? So there is no magic bullet. And I totally agree with what Grant said, that it's more about operations. It's about visibility. And to build on even what Michael said, the first thing is understanding what's there. And the funny thing about cloud is, oh, by the way, tomorrow it's going to be different. So it's that continuous journey of knowing what's there, discovering what's there. And then once you know what's there, now we can apply some baselines to it, apply some benchmarks to it of, is this secure? Are there things that somebody just did this afternoon that opened up a port that shouldn't be open, or too many permissions? So it's that idea of, and yes, well, most importantly, getting help, having someone that's there on the journey with you, expertise that can help guide that and can keep that continuous discovery and controls.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan. Chase, one thing that this person could do with their lean IT staff, other than feed them, is sorry, I'm just really full of the dumb jokes today. You'll see them in the networking lounge too. Sorry. One thing that they could do.
Yeah, so protecting the cloud is, from what we've all discussed, is not easy. It's difficult, especially with the lean IT staff. So something to help with that, just go back to the basics, start looking at different solutions, talk to experts. Make sure you're vetting everything out there. There's no one size fits all solution. Make sure you can, when you bring on a tool, you guys have the bandwidth to be able to manage that. You have the expertise to be able to use that tool to its most effective use. If you have to bring in some help, some third party help with that, you need to do it, just because it's not something you can do all on your own self, especially with the lean IT staff. So make sure you're vetting every solution out there. Again, there's no one perfect solution, as these guys have been talking about. So just make sure that you do your due diligence and you make sure you don't put too much on your team to be able to handle the security.
Okay, thank you. Over to William.
Well, I'm going to be a little bit contrarian, and forgive me for stepping out in left field here, but I'm going to say the most important security thing coming up is going to be the incredible increase in and dependence we're going to have on automation for deploying, managing, securing, and cleaning up virtual images. If you take a look at how 5G works, and this is a particularly important case for industrial IoT, every application you use is built on the fly. The stack of the network is virtualized, and the application stack and its infrastructure is virtualized. And as you move from cell tower to cell tower, that stack is torn down and reinstantiated at the next hub. This means for an urban environment where you hit, 1 million devices in a square kilometer, that's a device every square meter. You're going to be bringing up and tearing down hundreds of thousands of virtual images a second. There's a problem that dates back more than 60 years called garbage collection. It has to do with the fact that when you allocate images and then tear them down, there's a little something left that says this was allocated. And it's not the image itself. It's the peripheral metadata around the creation and teardown of that image that is going to clog the arteries of our IT environments. So I'd say the garbage collection problem, which is a subset of the general shadow splat problem, shadow IT, shadow cloud, shadow OT, that's going to be a real killer for organizations that are looking forward with, especially with 5G.
Wow, interesting final thought, man. We could do a whole webcast just on that. Wow.
I'm in.
Interesting. I like that. Yeah, right? I'll do it. Just tell me. Get it on my calendar. Okay, excellent. Mike Lloyd, over to you.
Yeah, you're right. Bill, we could do an entire thing just on that, right? It wasn't so much contrarian as just a really good alternative angle. And what I don't want to do is go back and repeat again. But it's like in real estate, right? What's the three most important things in security? Inventory, inventory, and inventory, right? It's like location, location, location. So, but I don't want to repeat all that. We've said that. I think we said it all the way through the panel. Let me focus on the lean side quickly. I find most people are drowning in tools, right? I find a typical organization is somewhere between 20 and 50 security technologies they're using, and they have about enough staff to drive 3 of them at an expert level, meaning they're not getting enough value out of an awful lot in their stack, right? So this is a very common problem that everybody's got. And what ends up happening, frankly, as a vendor, I just know this is true. It's not a nice thing to say, but we end up killing off a lot of the products that we buy. I know a lot of organizations who are rationalizing their spend these days just because you can't get enough staff to be expert in all the things you need to do. Okay, but that means you need to be able to figure out what's really, really important. And that, in a sense, is part of what this question is. So a quick framework, I'll keep this as fast as I can, because I've done entire webinars on just this point. But there's a thing in the Air Force, US Air Force came up with called the OODA loop. And so if you're in the military, you've probably heard this to death. But if you're not, you may not have heard this. The OODA loop is who wins when 2 pilots get into a dogfight between 2 aircraft and try and kill each other. What they found is it's not the guy with the better plane. It's not the guy with the bigger guns. It's the guy with the fastest OODA loop. So what's that? That's observe, orient, decide, act. These 4 things you have to do. And then when you get to the end, you go back and you do it again. And then you do it again. And if you can do it faster than the other guy, if you can get inside his OODA loop, you win. Well, that's the nature of the security challenge we have. What you need to do, if you have a lean IT staff and you need the best security possible, is you need to go figure out which of your investments are in observe, orient, decide, and act. If you're missing any one of those 4, you have a serious problem. If you got 3 things in one of them, maybe you can get it down to 2, maybe you can get it down to 1. But you must do observe, orient, decide, act. And I say I could spend a long time on the Air Force justification of why it has to be those 4 and nothing less than that. Personally, what I do is orient. But observe, of course, there's tons and tons of fact-finding security technologies. That's usually where people are over-invested. Most people have very little orient. That means take the fact that I'm seeing and relate it to me. So in the dogfight situation, that other plane is going up on my windshield. Yeah, but am I right way up or upside down? Right? I've got to know which way up I am to be able to orient to that fact and then use it. Then I can decide and then act. And decide is where SIEM fits, and act is where SOAR, SOAR fits these days. So you can map your security investments into these 4 things: observe, orient, decide, act. You need all 4. I happen to be good at orient, but you need other specialties like you see across this panel and across the show to fill in your portfolio of OODA.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Interesting stuff. Thank you to our great sponsors, Alert Logic, Arctic Wolf, Checkpoint, Red Seal, and Trend Micro for making not only this panel possible, but today's virtual conference. I definitely want to thank Mike, Grant, Chase, Ryan, and William for sharing their information and expertise on cloud with us today, and putting up with my dumb jokes. So thank you, gentlemen. If you are having any trouble with cloud, go see these people. Seriously, they're here. Go by the booth. They can help you. This does conclude our panel, No Perimeter Security in the Cloud. I apologize we went long, everybody, but we had a lot of stuff to share. So this concludes our panel. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and we'll see you at the next session. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Tom.